Alrighty, here we are on 4.2, part of a whole as a percent. So, this is what you need to write down at the top, this proportion setup. For all of these, we're going to be using part over whole equals percent over 100. So this 100 will always be here, and these other three spots are going to be what we have to fill in, and one of them is what we're going to have to find. Alright, so if we look at the opening exercise, it says, what is the whole unit in each scenario? So whenever we're looking for the whole unit, we're looking for that keyword of. Alright, so write yourself a note about that. So if we look at the first one, it says 15 is what part of 90? The 90 is the whole unit that we're looking at. Number 2 says what number is 10% of 56? So if we're looking at 56, 56 would be our whole unit. The third one, 90% of a number is 180. So it just says of a number, so that means we don't know what that is, so we're just going to give that a variable like x. The next one says a bag of candy contains 300 pieces and 25% of the pieces in the bag are red. So it says of the pieces here, and we know that there's 300 of those, so that is our whole unit. The next one, we have 70% of the students earned a B on the test. So it says of the students, so again, we don't know that number, so I'm just going to give it a letter like x. And then the last one, the 20 girls in the class represented 55% of the students in the class. So again, it says of the students, so we don't know that number, so we're going to label that again as x. Alright. If we look at part B here, it says read each problem and complete the table to record what you know. So now we're trying to figure out the part, the whole, and the percent. So the first one says 40% of the students on the field trip love the museum. If there are 20 students on the field trip, how many love the museum? So the easy ones always to pick out are the percents. So we know this one is 40%. Now let's do the whole first. So it says if there are 20 students on the field trip. So we know for sure the whole group is 20. So that's our whole. They're asking how many love the museum. We don't know that, so that will be our x. The second one says 40% of the students on the field trip love the museum. If 20 students love the museum, how many are on the field trip? So again, we see that percent right away. It's 40%. Now you need to read this closely because it looks like it might be the same as the first one, but it's not. This one says if 20 students love the museum, how many are on the field trip? So we don't know that whole number. So that's our x. But we do know that the part is 20. And then if we look at the last one here, it says 20 students on the field trip love the museum. If there are 40 students on the field trip, what percent love the museum? So it's asking what percent. We don't know that, so that's our x. And again, we know that our part is 20 because 20 love the museum. And there are 40 students total, so 40 is our total. Right? So now that we've had some practice trying to figure out the part, the whole, and the percent, now we're going to solve some problems. Right, this equation we're going to talk about in the next lesson, so kind of ignore that for now. But go ahead and write that proportion set up at the top again so you have it on your paper. Part over whole equals percent over 100. Right, so if we look at number 1, it says in Ty's math class, 20% of the students earned an A on the test. If there were 30 students in the class, how many got an A? So the first thing you're going to do is set up that Boolean proportion to fill in. And we know this is always 100. So they said that 20% of the students earned an A, so that means 20 goes in the percent spot. And we know that there were 30 total students, so that goes in the bottom. And then this is our x. So now this is where our cross products come back. We can't do equivalent ratios from 30 to 100. It's not going to be a nice number. So when we cross multiply, we get 100x equals 600. We divide by 100 on both sides, and we get that x equals 6. So we could say that 6 students got an A. Alright. The next one says, in Ty's English class, 70% of the students completed an essay by the due date. If there are 30 students in Ty's English class, how many completed the essay by the due date? So again, we put in our blank proportion, put down our 100, that will always be there. And we know it's 70%, so it goes up top here. And again, there are 30 total students in the class, so this bottom spot will have the 30, and we're looking for the part. So again, when we cross multiply, we get 100x equals 2100. We divide by 100, and we get x equals 21. So we would say that 21 students completed the essay. And of course, as you're solving these, go back and check your answer and see if it makes sense with the percents. Like for this example, it was 70%. 21 seems to be about 70% of 30, whereas the other one was only 20%, so 6 is a good fit for 20% of 30. Alright. Example 2 says, a bag of candy contains 300 pieces, of which 28% are red. How many pieces are red and how many pieces are not red? So which quantity represents the whole? We know that would be the 300 total pieces of candy. The next part says, which of the terms in the percent equation is unknown? Define a letter or a variable to represent the unknown quantity. So we'll just call it x. And what we don't know is how many red pieces. And we know that this is the portion of the proportion. So now we're going to solve our proportion here, set it up, put in our blank one. We know it's 100 on the bottom. We know the whole is 300, and they told us 28% are red, so this is going to be 28, and then our x goes up here. So when we cross multiply, we get 100x equals, and when you multiply this, you get 8,400. Divide by 100. So we get x equals 84. So to answer the first part of the question, we can say there are 84 red pieces. And now they want to know how many are not red. So we would say 300 minus 84, and that equals 216, and those pieces are not red. So 216 pieces are not red. Alright, go ahead and flip over to the next page. We just have a few more examples here we're going to go through. So example 3 says, comparing part of a whole to the whole with the percent formula. Zoe inflated 24 balloons for decorations at the middle school dance. If Zoe inflated 15% of the balloons that are inflated for the dance, how many balloons are there in total? Alright, so if we set up our blank proportion, we know this is 100 on the bottom. We know our percent is 15. So she inflated 24 balloons, and that was 15% of the total. So that means we know the part is 24. We're looking for the total. So now we use our cross multiplication, so we get 15x equals 2400. We divide by 15 on both sides, and we get x equals, when you divide that, 160. So we would say there are 160 total balloons. Alright, and then one more here. Haley is making admission tickets to the middle school dance. So far she has made 112 tickets, and her plan is to make 320 tickets. What percent of the admission tickets has Haley produced so far? So this one's a little different. Now we're looking for that percent. So we put in our blank proportion. We know this is 100 on the bottom, and we don't know the percent this time. but we know that the total that she wants is 320, and then the part that she has made is 112. So now we cross multiply. 320x equals 112, so 11,200. Divide by 320 on both sides, and we get that x equals 35. So to answer the question though, we would say that she has produced 35% of the tickets. So don't forget to include that percent part. If you just say 35, then that's not actually answering the question. Alright, so I know that was a lot of examples. If you have any questions, I'll bring those into class, and then we will do some practice on our own tomorrow.